I went to start feeding her, and I remember very clearly starting to feed her, and a provider walked in and they gasped. And they said, "I can't believe that you would do that. Your breast milk is killing your baby."
Hi, Trill. I'm so excited to have you on today. Welcome to the show. I cannot wait for everyone to learn more about Free to Feed and your story, why you started it, and everything about you.
Thank you so much, Laura. It is a pleasure to join you today.
So, yeah, do you want to tell the listeners more about kind of like why did you start Free to Feed, the story behind it, how this idea was born?
Oh, I appreciate it. I have a PhD in cellular molecular biology, and it was in my last year of grad school that kind of the inception of Free to Feed began. I was finishing out my dissertation. I was really focused on protein research specifically, and we decided to have our first daughter during that time, which is a fun time to decide to have a baby, right, while you're trying to finish grad school. Not recommended. And my oldest daughter, when she was born, she was inconsolable. She screamed all of the time. And I took her in and said, like, I don't know what's wrong, but like, I feel like something's got to be wrong. Like, she's always upset. And we were told, like, yeah, some babies are like that. She has colic. And just sent home. And at 3 weeks old, after 3 weeks of her screaming at us, we woke up to find her completely covered in a rash from head to toe with a massive bloody diaper. As you can imagine, I was terrified. So I took her back to the pediatrician and said, like, well, I kind of feel like I might know why she's been screaming at me now for the last 3 weeks, but what do we do from here? And even then, even when I felt like this is very serious, this is very scary, I was told, like, yeah, this happens sometimes. It's likely that she has some kind of food reactivity problem. Take cow's milk out of your diet. That's the likely culprit. And, good luck with that. And that was all the information I was given. And I took cow's milk protein out of my diet, even though I love cheese. So I want to mention that. Took cow's milk protein out of my diet. I wanted to keep breastfeeding, and she spiraled. She got worse really quickly. And eventually we were admitted to the hospital because all that was coming out of her little body was blood, and their skin was weeping and infected, and I was doing everything that the doctors were telling me to do. And we were in the hospital where we'd just gotten settled into our room, and she got hungry, obviously, as like a newborn does. And so I went to start feeding her, and I remember very clearly starting to feed her, and a provider walked in and they gasped, which was shocking to me. And they gasped and they said, "I can't believe that you would do that. You're essentially poisoning your baby right now. You're hurting your baby. Your breast milk is killing your baby." There's a whole nother conversation to be said about bedside manners. But I was absolutely devastated because our breastfeeding journey was already hard as it was with learning how to latch and everything else. And I was shocked that I was told that. And in order to figure out what was wrong, they decided to put her on a 24-hour starvation diet, which is literally what it sounds like, where they just don't feed her for 24 hours. And at the end of 24 hours, I was a shell of a human. I, at this point, had been like pumping in the stairwell because if I pumped in our room, she would get really upset, understandably so. And at the end of the 24 hours, they said, yep, she got like a little bit better by not feeding her. So it's likely food related. It's likely she has a food allergy issue, but we can't tell you what it's to. And so here's a hypoallergenic formula to switch her to. And which at that point, like, yes, absolutely. Like whatever I can do to help her feel better. But then the other shoe dropped that the hypoallergenic formula was $50 a can and only lasts a couple of days per can. And I'm a grad student. And so I went from like feeding my baby something that felt like I was hurting her to not being able to afford to feed her at all. And so I asked the questions of like, okay, technically, since before you told me to take cow's milk out of my diet, if you can make a hypoallergenic formula that she can tolerate, can I make a hypoallergenic breast milk that she can tolerate, right? Like, what are my options here? And the answer is a hesitant maybe, but we don't know what she's allergic to. We can't test her at this stage. So here's just a laundry list of things that she could be allergic to, and good luck with that. And we were discharged. And that was over a decade ago. And unfortunately, what we find today is that the resources are just as abysmal. When my second daughter was born, she started presenting with symptoms really quickly. And in all of the irony in the whole wide world, when my second daughter was born, I was working for a dairy processing facility, which the irony being that like cow's milk is the first thing that they tell you to cut. And so I'm making millions of pounds of like cottage cheese and sour cream. I'm running their lab for them. And I learned that the dairy industry had a really simple little test that would show us if we accidentally got other allergens in the milk during the process. So for example, if we ran soy milk on a vat and then cleaned it and ran cow's milk, we'd have a simple little test. It's just like a pregnancy test that would show and prove that, yeah, we cleaned this well enough. We didn't accidentally get soy into the cow's milk. And of course, I had one of those moments of like, oh, I'm breastfeeding my second daughter with food allergies. I'm on another elimination diet. I have no idea what she's allergic to. I don't know how to navigate this. There are no resources. And it was like, oh, this would change my life. Like, what if I could just know what was in my milk right now? And so I admittedly ran into a closet with the test and I squirted breast milk on it because I was like, maybe this will solve all my problems. And it did not work. And that was 7 years ago. And I spent the last 7 years now working very hard towards creating all of the resources that I wish I had when I was breastfeeding my two kiddos with food allergies and creating the first test system that detects allergens real time in breast milk at home.
That's incredible because it's so much more common than we all think, right? And I think the most frustrating thing for a new mom is that there's just no help from the medical system at all. And a lot of times, kind of how you were explaining it, it really gets downplayed. It's like they're projectile vomiting. That's what I hear a lot. It's like, oh, it's normal. They're colic. Oh, it's normal. No, it's not. And yeah,
Normal.
it's really scary and it's just so heartbreaking as a new mom. You already are trying to just like do your best and it's so overwhelming. So I can't even imagine what that felt like. So can you maybe tell me a little bit more about like what do you offer today? In terms of, because I know that the test is kind of still a little bit out, which I cannot wait to hopefully have you back and talk all about that because that's incredible. Every mom would love to have that in their pocket, I'm sure. But yeah, can you tell us like a little bit about like what you have available for moms right now and help them navigate this hurdle?
Yeah, when we first started 7 years ago, the goal was to take the scientific research that was available, which was very lackluster and sparse, but take the information that was available and translate it for parents so that they could have digestible content that they could understand and really get like support and just have the education behind like what's happening in my body, what's happening in baby's body. So as I started pursuing grant funding and investor funding to work towards the test strip, we also like started a website and a blog and started talking about this on social media and really being there to support parents. And along the way, what I found is that while we're creating a new biotechnology system, right, which is the test kit, which takes a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of research because up until this point, when we started Free to Feed, no one had done the work to know exactly what each of the dietary proteins look like when they reach the breast. So we had to take like 3 steps backwards first to say, oh, okay, like these test strips for cow's milk aren't going to work because when our body breaks down soy, it breaks it down very specifically. And so first we have to know how that happens. And then we have to know, does it change body to body and person to person and time to time, right? So there's a lot of nuance there. And in the middle of all of that, in the middle of like learning all of this and sharing and trying to help families, one of the beauties of building this community is that parents came to us and said like, hey, I need this. This is what I need. I need an app that helps me log my intake and my symptomology. And so we built it. We have an app on the app stores that's free to feed. It's completely free for parents to use. They can track and take images of symptoms, log their intake, baby's intake, and export it for any providers that they're working with. And then overwhelmingly, parents said, can you just work with me one-on-one? I need somebody to sit down and tell me, why is colic not normal, right? Like, why is it not normal for my baby to projectile vomit? And what is it likely that's happening? What's going on in their body? Why is this going on? I've been dismissed over and over and over again, but I know something is wrong. And so we took another step and said, okay, well, yeah, we can do that. We have the science and education and research. We can link you with providers who are educated specifically in this very niche field to work with you one-on-one and help you through figuring out what your baby's specifically allergic to, and through the elimination diet process and the reintroduction strategy and all the nuance in between. And so we offer consultation services, essentially like a telehealth educational style consult the parents can do one-on-one with our providers in order to help them navigate their journey. And then now, today, with the inflection now of AI, along this journey, I've created a lot of content, a lot of educational resources, not only for providers, but also for parents. Courses on starting solids, courses on reflux, courses on allergic proctitis. And now with this influx of AI, what we found is we were able to take all of that content from me and basically build a Dr. Trill in your pocket, right? And so we were able to build a full-fledged AI program alongside a program at Stanford University where we did an IRB approved study and we got a ton of data around symptoms and triggers and reactivity, and then built an AI platform around all of this data and all this educational content. And we are going to be launching this very soon. And we're very, very excited. And so there's this build and momentum of like, how do we put together all of the resources that families need to navigate this with confidence? And for each journey, this looks a little bit different. So we offer different items in order to, kind of a la carte piecemeal together. Oh, this is what's most valuable for me.
That's incredible. So basically, someone can go on the app and can kind of like describe the symptoms, and then the AI, which is taught by you, gives back suggestions of, have you tried taking out this yet? Have you tried taking out that yet? Is that kind of how I can imagine it?
That's part of it. Yes. So imagine instead of the, quote unquote top allergens that we think of, when we think of top allergens, and parents often get told to remove this top allergen. But top, quote unquote, top allergens are those that cause those life-threatening food allergy reactions like anaphylactic shock. And they are such, they are listed like that because regulators want food manufacturers to properly label them because they can cause a life-threatening reaction. And so what we find is that the type of symptoms and types of allergic reactions that infants are experiencing more often than not are not the anaphylactic shock, right? They are a different type of food allergy. So that anaphylactic shock is categorized as IgE mediated food allergy. And a lot of children who are experiencing the discomfort, the colic, bloody stool, skin reactions, upper GI reactions, they have non-IgE mediated food allergies. And so what we've done is we've collected data from hundreds and hundreds of families who are navigating those symptoms to be able to say, if you're navigating symptom A, B, and C, right? Like my youngest daughter had profuse vomiting, and she was really uncomfortable and she had really slow weight gain from it. And so I would be able to put that information in, and then it marries that to our database and says, okay, based on that information, one, we're sorry that you're navigating that because that's so hard. And two, these are the most likely foods based on those symptoms that you're specifically navigating to be causing your baby these types of issues. And now let's talk about how to safely eliminate those things, which of the items we eliminate, what order we do it in. If we eliminate things, how do we make sure that your diet is complete moving forward, right? If you're taking cow's milk protein out of your diet, I want to make sure you still have enough calcium in your intake as you move along, right? So it's a lot of nuance to the journey, and that's where we're hopeful that the AI will be able to cover down on a lot of that.
Which is a big part too, right? You're just panicking and thinking of your baby while actually not really keeping in mind that you still cannot be malnourished, because that's like a whole nother issue on its own once you don't have the vitamins that you need. And then starting to, I don't know, people always say, like for every baby you lose a tooth. So there's definitely a story behind that. In terms of like, that's just something that kind of came to mind right now. How long does it take for the food to, first of all, reach your breast milk and then to get out of your breast milk? Let's say I'm having eggs right now and I know, or I will find out my baby's allergic to eggs. Like how long, like after I consume it, will it be in the breast milk? And then how long does it take to get it out of it?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, an area where there's a lot of confusion in this field and a lot of misinformation and confusion in lactation and food and nutrition. And unfortunately, this is like all of those things all put together. So this is an area where there is confusion. So what we see in the actual research is that when you consume a food, let's say it's noon, right? So you consume a food, you're going to have some eggs over lunch, and you consume the eggs. The fastest that research has shown that it can transfer to the breast is 15 minutes, which wow, right? Right? That's fascinating that it can transfer from your mouth to your breast milk within a 15-minute time frame, which is fascinating. And so those of us that transfer really quickly, that's the fastest that we've seen it. to date. And what we see in the research is that stereotypically we will peak in concentration within a couple of hours of ingestion. So 1 to 2 hours of ingestion. And that means for you, you had your eggs at noon. We expect to see your peak by 2 o'clock. And then from there, we will start to steadily reduce in concentration. And the number one thing, this is important for this topic, the number one thing that removes those eggs from your breast milk is breast milk removal itself. There is some cellular metabolism that happens where like our cells naturally remove things like alcohol, for example. You may hear, don't pump and dump because over time, alcohol and cellular metabolism, it will be removed over time either way. Whereas with proteins, there's less cellular metabolism that happens for proteins versus that chemical. And so the number one way to remove the egg is to remove your milk. So on the timing front, then, what we see is you peak in concentration a few hours after ingestion, steadily reduce from there with regular breast milk removal. And more often than not, we see a complete removal of the amount of egg that would cause a food allergic response within an 8-hour window. And so for those that, because we know there's always outliers, right? There's always people with slower metabolisms or different lactation cadences or different hydration and things. So we give a 24-hour window to kind of like capture those that may be an outlier. But for a vast majority of us, it's within an 8-hour window. And why that's so very important is because when I was navigating this with my kiddo, and unfortunately today too, many parents are told that it takes weeks for a food that you consume to leave your breast, which just as like an aside standard common sense note, like that doesn't even make sense. Like those things that you consume, a dietary protein is not going to stay in your breast for weeks on end. Otherwise, my breast milk may have been just made entirely of Ben and Jerry's for the, first couple weeks of my breastfeeding. It is not, that there's nothing about the proteins that makes it like hold on and stick and stay within your breast milk. It is clear just like everything else, just like flavonoids, just like medications. The only medications that stick and stay are ones that are made to do that, right? The medications that are made to have a delayed entry into your circulatory system. Everything else transfers and clears really quickly. And then the other piece of the timing, right? Because we have two bodies, two different things happening in two different bodies. On your side, that's the transfer and clearance. And then there's the timing on baby's side. And I think this is part of where the confusion comes from, is that once baby consumes, let's say you have your lunch, you peak at 2 o'clock, you happen to breastfeed at 2 o'clock. So baby receives the egg that's in your milk. When you are, unbeknownst to you, egg is a trigger for your baby. You're going to see one of two types of reactions next. There's an acute reaction where it happens fast and heals fast. These types of reactions usually happen either immediately, and those are like the vomit responses, for example, and some rash responses, and they heal quickly, meaning that like, let's say baby vomits, I breastfeed at 2, we have a big old profuse vomiting, right? Like you mentioned, at 3 o'clock, and then baby's feeling better. We're probably not feeling better, but baby's feeling better, right? It's a quicker response. And then the second category is called a chronic reaction. And a chronic reaction takes longer to happen and takes longer to heal. And so the like sweet spot for a chronic reaction, and these are going to be some eczema responses and then blood and stool, mucusy stool, diarrhea, constipation. So lower end of the baby, lower GI. The sweet spot for when we see a reaction is usually 6 to 8 hours after ingestion, but it can take longer because we're most of the time looking at stools. So we're really at the frequency of the stools, right? Like if your baby's only stooling every other day, it might take up to 48 hours post egg for you to see that there's blood in stool if you're not getting the stool very frequently. And so we give up to 48 hours, so 6 to 48 hours for those chronic reactions. And then there's healing for the chronic reaction. So those chronic reactions oftentimes cause a wound of some form. So if it's on the skin, right, an actual eczema response wound on the skin, inflammation on the skin, or if it's blood and stool, mucusy and stool, it's actually inflammation in the gastrointestinal system. And that's going to take time to heal. So even if you no longer eat eggs, you're going to continue, maybe you see blood and stool at, baby breastfeeds at 2, you see blood and stool 6 hours later, and you're like, okay, no more eggs, but then you keep seeing blood and stool, right? Like baby keeps stooling and there's still more blood. That's because we've literally caused a little bit of a wound in the gastrointestinal system, and now it needs to close. And so you're going to see a little bit of blood, and it's going to keep getting better and better day over day, stool over stool. until you get full wound closure. And so I think that's where part of the confusion is that that healing day over day isn't because there's still egg in your breast. That healing day over day is because that literal wound is needing to close and heal. And that takes time, just like if you were to cut your hand, for example, and you can't put a Band-Aid on it, right? It takes time for that to heal. And the difference there, the reason why that difference is important is that then, for example, let's say now I know my baby's allergic to egg. What if you go and eat something and you accidentally have an egg exposure? It's a big difference for you to know it's clear in my breast in 8 hours versus, oh, it takes 2 weeks for it to clear from my breast. Those are two very different worries, two very different journeys then. And it makes the journey so much more stressful to think that, oh, if I have a slip, it's going to be in my body and my breast for weeks on end versus, no, actually, I know the science and the timing.
Absolutely. That's huge. So basically, if I realized I had an accidental exposure, it's something that I know my baby is allergic to, then you recommend actually pumping and dumping for 8 hours, or what do
So
you
I'd
usually?
never ever recommend dumping. Never ever ever dumping. So
Okay.
pumping, yes. Pumping and saving for two reasons. One, because a vast majority of these kiddos with non-IgE mediated food allergies will outgrow their allergies. And so it's very likely, very possible that you'll be able to go back and use that milk at some point. So I would pump it, I would save it, and I would write on the bag, I got dairied. I got egged, right? I've been egged today on, July such and such, got egged. And then save that milk and you can use it for other things. You can use it for like milk baths for you, things like that. You can use it later when your baby has outgrown these egg allergies, or you can donate it to other babies. So definitely don't dump. Please never ever dump your liquid gold.
Wow. Okay. That's such an incredible advice because I didn't even think about the donation part because there's other babies who need the breast milk but aren't allergic. So that's just so beautiful and so huge. Wow. And it's so weird. Like why do they tell you this like pump and dump aspect? It just doesn't even make any sense then. So
Really
even when
doesn't.
you kind of like with alcohol, it's like even then don't pump and dump, just wait the time, right? And then pump. So very interesting. Okay. In terms of kind of going back to your business, I mean, we could go on and on, I think, about all the just wild aspects of breast milk. It's so fascinating. It really is liquid gold. But in terms of your business, kind of like what have been like the challenges you've been facing over the last few years?
Um, We have been through so many things at Free to Feed. We have experienced moves across the country. So we started in Idaho, and then today we're in a lab that's in North Carolina. Because I had an opportunity to partner with a lab out in the Triangle, and so we took that opportunity and moved across the country for Free to Feed. We have been through disagreements with previous individuals who are parts of the company, and having to navigate that has been very difficult. And then we've had setbacks as it relates to different funding mechanisms, right? So we all know that there are some struggles right now with companies and federal funding being removed, and we have been impacted there too. And so it has not only is the problem that we're solving one that is under researched and misunderstood, it's also underfunded. And unfortunately for me, we know from, publications and research by several organizations that when we look at venture capital funding, which we are venture capital funded as well, that only 2% of all venture capital funding goes to women founded companies. And that is a huge battle, right? And it's, I think, a big part of the additional hill for us to climb is not only are we founded by two women, we also are addressing a largely woman-based problem, right? So like, yes, absolutely, all parents in the entire family is impacted here. But in general, when I'm working with investors, a vast majority of the individuals I'm working with couldn't be further away from my problem if they tried, right? They are very far away from breastfeeding a baby at 2 a.m. who's crying and has a bloody stool, right? Like they have never experienced this before. They've never even heard of it before. So it's really hard to get that like personal buy-in for check writers. And it's also hard to get buy-in from the science community when the non-IgE mediated food allergies that we're addressing didn't get diagnostic codes until 2017. And so there's a really big gap in the research here for me to lean on then for like research grant committees to say like, here's all the predicate research. Instead, we're having to say, we are the predicate research, right? Like there's a little bit, but like we're next. And that can make grant funding even a bigger thing to tackle.
So in terms of like just today, I know most of that it sounds like is especially towards the testing, right? Which is so incredible. Talking about kind of your AI platform and your courses, how are you kind of growing the business right now? And how are you finding the like moms to get in front of and kind of like what's planned for the next year?
Yeah. So to hit on the last part of your question first, because it kind of leads into the second part, is that when I started Free to Feed, for better or worse, I have never, prior to Free to Feed, I've never been much of a social media guru at all. I'm wholeheartedly a scientist. And so I started Free to Feed and I was like, okay, we're going to have to be on social media. I'm going to have to share there. And I want to be really transparent about the company and the process and the good and the bad and the ugly. And so I got on Instagram and I got on eventually TikTok and all the other platforms. And, I never thought that I would use my PhD to dance to booby facts on the internet. But here we are. That is the how that we reach these families, right? Like moms and parents who are searching for answers are oftentimes on social media looking for the experts who are talking about their specific problem, right? And so that's where we step in. And so I've spent literally the last 7 years building social media presence and platform. And as a startup, right, as many of your listeners may know, as a startup, we don't have a big budget for other people to be dancing to booby facts on the internet. And we are the experts, right? Like when you are building trust with the community and building a community, they want to be hearing directly from the expert themselves, right? Versus other people that you hire in to do content. And so that means that a big chunk of my time spent is educating on our social media platforms, right? Doing Instagram lives, answering Q&As, being in DMs, looking at literal pictures of baby poop to try to help families navigate like, hey, do I need to get a consult? Does looks look normal? I don't know what to do. I'm super stressed. And so that's how we reach and have built our community to date is creating free resources on our website. We've got a beautiful blog. We've got a diaper decipher for that other problem with the DMs I mentioned. But we have lots of great resources that are free. And then the additional one-on-one personalized support that they can go in and say like, yeah, I need more than, the blog's great. It's super helpful for foundational, but like, let's dive in, let's dig in and let's figure out what and pinpoint exactly what my baby's reactive to. And so now the next step of that is how do we do so in a way that's accessible across the board, right? How do we do so in a way that you can get that same support, but at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday while you're breastfeeding and it's dark and you're alone and you're just, feeding and you've got your phone, right? That's where I want to be with you in that very moment versus like having to book a time and then you can meet with us 3 days later, for example. Of course, there's a place for that and that's important. But I also want to be with you right that moment when like you're really at your lowest point and to know that you're not alone and that we're here to support you and that you're doing an amazing job.
That's incredible. So people that sign up for the AI platform, do they also kind of, is there like a next tier that says like, oh, I didn't find what I was like, and I just need that like personal one-on-one time with you. First of all, is it still you? Do you have a team now? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it was back in 2021. It was initially me. Or 2020, I think, is when the very end of 2020 is when I started. It was initially me because I was like, I don't know, will people pay to spend time with me if they, a nominal fee to spend like 30 minutes with me? I don't know. Let's find out. And then before I knew it, I accidentally had like 18 consults booked every day out for weeks. And I was like, oh, I broke it. Okay, well, this isn't sustainable for me. And we made our first official hire, which was Annie, who is with us still today and now our director of allergy support. And she runs a team of almost a dozen different providers who are registered nurses, pediatricians, lactation consultants, registered dietitians, because again, this journey is nuanced. So like each journey needs a different step, needs a different kind of provider, right? If you're navigating lactation problems on top of food allergies, do you need an IBCLC? If you're navigating like, I'm on this elimination diet and I'm worried about my micronutrient intake, you need a registered dietitian, right? So now we have this full team of individuals that work with families one-on-one, which is incredible. And to your point about like tiers, the way that we've structured it is that for those who go in and do a one-on-one consult, they automatically get enrolled into the AI system for a month for free so that they can have that support. They've already met with a consultant, and now those like little nuanced questions of like, oh, I wish I would have asked this, right? You're automatically enrolled into the AI, and it helps you like, here, look at this ingredient deck for me. Is there dairy in here? Right? And like, oh yeah, actually I would be worried about natural flavors because what does that mean? Proceed with caution, right? Like those kind of help that are quick and nuanced and still need an answer. And then on the flip side, there's the option to get into the AI platform and to get to a point of like, okay, the AI has been super helpful as it relates to like my journey up to this point, but I really need somebody to like look at poop pictures with me one on one and be like, this one's good, this one's bad, and this is why, right? And really dig in literally right into the nuance of like my specific journey that an AI can't do, right? I need that human touch. And so there's both sides and both options because I think that certain people will want to dive into the AI immediately and eventually get to the point of needing a one-on-one, whereas others will be like, no, I want the one-on-one right away, and then I'll use the AI as a supplement to answer questions after.
Absolutely. That's incredible. I just love that you've had such a high demand. I mean, it makes sense, but that's just really beautiful and just kind of like emphasizes that there's such a need out there. And it's just really scary that most moms still hear from their pediatricians, oh no, it's okay, and like really no plan. So I'm so glad and grateful that you created a resource for moms and parents overall to really find relief. So what do you have planned for the next 12 months beyond your AI launch? Like what's kind of like, what are your goals? What are the goals for free to feed for the year and how are you going to get there?
Yeah. So we have big, audacious goals, of course, always for the rest of the year. We have officially brought on a new CEO. So I have been the acting CEO for the last 7 years with the goal of firing myself from day one to get to a point where we were successful enough that I could recruit in someone amazing for the company. And I'm not going anywhere. I am stepping into the chief science officer role so that I can really focus on that outreach, the assisting parents and giving that education and advocacy and awareness, and then also focus really on the science side of the house. This AI launch and making sure that it's fully flushed, the test kit launch and making sure that it is the next to perfect in accuracy and efficacy for our product that we're getting to market. The goal of our new CEO as she comes on and gets going, which is so exciting, is to lead us into our next fundraise. And so like I mentioned, we are venture capital backed. We're also grant backed. And with the shift in funding that we experienced at the beginning of the year, what was originally planned to be maybe a 2026 and mid 2026 fundraise is now. And so we did a little bridge round, which was necessary for the current like situation with the funding. And now we are full steam ahead and we're looking at launching our next fundraise this year.
That's incredible. Big things ahead. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you jumping on. It's just such an incredible resource for moms out there. And thank you for your mission. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And also want to mention that if anybody's curious or interested, you can find us at freetofeed.com and on any of the social media channels at free.to.feed.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm so excited for everyone to just jump in and hopefully book a one-on-one consult and explore your AI software. I mean, that's just incredible. And I can't wait to hear the feedback on that.
Me too. Thank you.